a proud member of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
Welcome to the Film Appraisers, the podcast that evaluates your favorite films. Each episode, we discuss a film that's brought to us by a listener or a guest, and then we see where it lands, and then we appraise it in each of the following categories. I really should write down our intro.
Yeah.
Then we appraise it in each of the following categories: narrative, music, technique, uniqueness, and longevity. Each category can get a maximum of $20,000 for a possible $100,000 for the most valuable film, and then we see where it stands next to the classics and other films brought to us by guests or listeners. My name is Josh, and today we take a look at a film that our buddy Terrence brought us. It's the third film from director and writer Richard Linklater. Get ready for the 1993 comedy Dazed and Confused, starring a wealth of up-and-coming talent, including the cinematic debut of Matthew McConaughey, which explains why Terrence chose the title of this one, folks. Get ready. It's episode 32. All right. Perfect title. And with us today to explore the youth of the 70s, none other than Joseph Raisin Kane.
Man, I got a drinking game for you. One shot every time Mitch touches his nose and pass out before halftime.
And I'm out. Joe, when I wrote that intro, I thought, man, that's a sweet nickname, Raisin Kane. And when I wrote it here in my notes, I forgot the apostrophe that replaces the G at the end of raising. So it looks like raisin, like the fruit. So I just imagine this California raisin or something like that. So
that's pretty accurate.
There.
I mean, look at me.
I'm seeing no Todd again, right? He's not with us.
No, I made that same joke about the drinking game to Todd earlier, and I haven't heard from him since. I just hope he's still living. Livin.
Wow, man, you prepared for the show. You acted like you didn't prepare earlier. No, you prepared. That's great.
No, I'm not prepared. That's the only thing I wrote for the whole show. Get ready. It's about to get off the rails real fast.
Well, so his loss, because today we're discussing the first of our, I don't even know what we call it. We've been labeling it like TFA Elite Selections or something like that. But
we're gonna have a creative name eventually, for sure.
We'll get there. We'll get there someday. I'm not stressing it. What it really means though is that those who sign up for the Film Appraisers Patreon subscriptions at patreon.com/filmappraisers, you get some additional content from Joe and me. First, you get to join us in the after show. So that's the show that once this main recording stops, like it will today when we finish Dazed and Confused, Joe and I head over to the after show. The format's a little bit more relaxed. Topics attempt to stay within the film that we discussed during the main show, but it really goes a lot of different places.
Yeah, I mean, we attempt to stay within the film. it's a loose framework, but it's fun. I mean, last time we did that Sex Bob-ombs style intro during you got to hear the intro last week on the main feed, but if you had the after show, you got to hear us all horrifyingly try to work our way through that. So it was a good time.
Yeah, the only thing more scarier than my attempt was my Arnold Schwarzenegger
I love your
impression.
Arnold.
I almost did it, but I can't.
I saw you open your mouth.
I'll save it for the Patreon. I was thinking about
it. Listen, I'm going to give a sneak peek without any spoilers. In the very near future, I'm going to make you give me your best Sly Stallone. So,
very good. Yeah, well, let's talk about that towards the end. That is definitely coming. No, the after show's fun. In addition to the after show, you also get our reactions episodes. If you're a patron, like the one we released a couple of weeks ago, where Joe and I discussed the recently released film, The Little Things. And Joe, that's where you say, "But wait, there's more." Now I need your best infomercial.
But wait. There's more. How was that? Was that all right?
There we go. Perfect. We also give you specials like the one coming up in March, where we will be bringing you exclusive coverage from the 28th Annual South by Southwest Film Festival, which is being held March 16th through the 20th. Now, this year, I'm not going to lie to you. The pickings are pretty slim when it comes to the choice of films for the film fest, COVID, right? But film festivals are not about just the big releases and the premieres. It's those festivals where you get those gems that go on to take the world by storm. But go and check it out, southbysouthwest.com, sxsw.com/festivals/film. They just released the new lineup. Let us know if there's a film there you want us to cover. We'll be more than happy to do that. Keep it spoiler free. And all of that is just to say thanks to those that support us in the show, because you folks are really, really appreciated.
Yeah, we list like just one thing on the patrons.
Patrons?
Look, I pretend to know how this works, but I don't. And when I say we know how this works, I mean speaking.
Life.
I don't pretend to know life. I don't know anything about life. That's very clear. Yeah, we would probably still do the show as much as possible and as often as possible without the patron support, but it'd be a lot harder. It goes a long way to helping keep the lights on and the things reasonably doable. So it means a lot.
Yeah, keeping the shows archived indefinitely, it really, really helps. All right, so let's get on to today's episode. Like we said, one of the perks to subscribing to our show is getting to select a film of your own to be appraised. And first up is Terrence, and he told us when he submitted Dazed and Confused, the reason that he picked the film was because it was a constant rewatch for him and his friends in high school. They had it on in the background almost every day that they would hang out. He said maybe it was for the music, but they spent a lot of time watching it as well. The one thing he does ask, though, is like his big sister, he wants us to take it easy on Mitch, specifically the acting of Mitch. Because he says if Mitch grabs the bridge of his nose one more time, then he thinks he's going to paddle his $$.
Listen, I saw this film a number of times before I noticed the nose touching, but once you notice it, you can't not.
Yeah, you don't.
It's I don't remember the number. It's like around 50 times though. It's like nonstop.
I've actually got it. I was going to bring it up in the after show. Let's see. The stat here is the word. Well, if you go to the dailybeast.com, that's the source. The word man is said 203 times, and he touches his nose 42 times.
Yeah, man, that's too much.
Yeah, needless to say, if you play some games with that, that's where Todd is. That's definitely where Todd is.
The scene. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but whatever. We're gonna roll with it. The scene where he finds out that when he's at the Emporium, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
And he finds
Emporium.
out that his buddy got paddled, and he asks how bad it was, and the girl's like, pretty bad. He touches his nose like 6 times in that scene alone. It's egregious.
Yeah, it starts with the first time that I really noticed it's in the Little League game, but then like if you're playing the drinking game that people do, there's no way you could make it past the Emporium and be awake.
No, you're definitely not making it past the Emporium.
All right, so the log line from IMDb. Have we ever defined to our listeners what a log line is? I always assume people know. If you don't know, it's like a 1 or 2 sentence statement that tells the film, tells you a little bit about the film. It tells you a little bit about the conflict. It's like the hook that brings you in. It's what they use to sell the film to distributors and to people to come watch it. One of my favorite log lines as a joke is The Wizard of Oz, and it's a total joke that somebody did. It says, transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. I really love that description of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's not wrong though.
This is not wrong. So the log line from IMDb: the adventures of high school and junior high students on the last day of school in May 1976. Joe, I feel like this film is a rite of passage for American cinephiles, and we heard from Terrence that his experience with this film. What about you? When were you first introduced to this particular movie?
So I have some complicated thoughts on. I don't know if I want to say complicated. I have some thoughts on like the rite of passage thing and this film's relevance going forward. Mm-hmm. That'll come up when we talk longevity. But I would say I think I was late middle school, early high school at the latest when I came across this. I mean, I was a big fan at the time. I liked it quite a bit at the time I came across it. And I want to say it was like maybe 7th or 8th grade.
That is also about the time that I was watching it. Yeah, that is right around the time, which is odd because you'd think this would not be something that, it was a different time. That was a different time when it came to what kids were watching.
Well, I mean, it's really not that bad outside of like as far as like content wise, like things you would hide your kid from. It's not that bad outside of some really choice. We'll go with like homophobic slurs and things like that. There's not a ton of like graphic anything other than some language, but I guess the drug use stuff. But
well, I was in junior high when I watched it, and it might be the catalyst for a lot of junior high kids when they get to high school. Maybe not. Those things happen. But
yeah, I don't know. I think kids who are going to do those things find those things regardless.
Yeah, it was very true. So it was mid 90s. I think it must have been right after it was released. I was staying the night, I think, over at a buddy of mine. And it was one of those weekends where you stay the first night and then you ask your parents the next night and you end up staying the whole weekend. Yep. And we watched this thing 1,000 times that weekend. We rented it Friday night and we kept it. It's not due for 2 days, back to the video store. We watched it and watched it and watched it and watched it. We watched it so much over that weekend. And it's about the age too where you're starting to get into that kind of music. And then especially in the 90s, you always go back a couple of decades and it seems to be like the most popular decade during that decade. So like in the 90s, those 70s, 80s, it was 60s, things like that. So it feels like that music was really popular, that 70s rock in the 90s. And man, we just thought this soundtrack was, it's a really good soundtrack. We just thought it was it. We thought it was it.
It would have been early 2000s for me. Maybe 01-ish, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we probably didn't rent it. We probably, if I had to guess, bought it out of the bargain bin on DVD at Walmart. Because it was pre-streaming, but definitely post like regularly renting things.
Richard Linklater, he's got quite the list of films. It's a very diverse filmmaker. And I'm looking at a list of his films right here, and there's a couple of them that popped up that I just didn't realize he did. I had no idea he did A Scanner Darkly. I've seen that. I like it. I mean, it's not the greatest, but I like it. It's really cool. It's got things that most people will recognize: School of Rock, Before Sunrise, that whole trilogy, things like that. What this film with what he's put out? How does this film stack up against the others that he's put out? Is this your favorite from him, least favorite, middle of the pack? Where does this stand?
There's a lot of stuff on here I haven't seen from him.
Yeah.
But from the stuff I've seen, I think it does kind of rise towards the top. Most of what he's done that I have seen is enjoyable, but kind of throwaway.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say any of it's bad, but it's not stuff like School of Rock I thought was entertaining, but it's not one that I'm like thinking about going back to regularly, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
A lot of his stuff. Boyhood, I kind of felt the same on. It wasn't a waste of my time, but it's not something that I ever pops into my head. Like, you know what I want to watch this weekend? It's like most of his stuff is in that category for me. But this one, I've definitely seen this one more times than anything he's done. So
I would probably pick, if I had to pick one that I would watch, that I would want to watch over and over. This one is in that list, but of his, I really like Bernie. I don't know if you've seen that one with Jack Black. It's a true story too, about a guy here in Texas, and it's just hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious.
I haven't seen that one.
It's pretty good. It's really good. It's a kind of a small, I wouldn't say sleeper. I don't like that term, but that's basically what it is. A little sleeper. Made the rounds at the film festivals and things like that. All right, hey, let's jump into the discussion of the film itself and see where this thing stacks up as far as our 5 categories. So narrative, uniqueness, longevity, technique, and music. I said that out of order, and I almost got caught up there. But let's see where that stands in those categories, and we'll start with narrative, and I will let you take that over.
All right, I can do that. I can talk about narrative. I have a lot of notes, I promise.
You're delaying. I feel the delay.
So the narrative, the story's good. It's simple. It's not entirely original. It definitely falls in that like teenage coming of age genre, which was super popular in the 80s. Seems to have hasn't gone away, but has gotten less popular as time has gone a little bit. I do think this one is more relatable than most of those films are, because the stakes are not quite so grand or bombastic. It's not like the stakes in a lot of those coming of age kids, like teenage movies, are really like unrealistically high. This one is just kind of like gonna get hazed, and the drama is like the drama and action is very much like just gonna drive around and underage drink. And so I think the most unrealistic thing was getting shot at driving around on, like, I think that's probably the most outlandish. I wouldn't even necessarily say unrealistic, but I think that would probably be the most outlandish thing on the list of things that happen in the film. The rest of it seems pretty real. I appreciate that. I think I like that the stakes. I think one of the things I like about this film is that it feels like, even though it takes place decades before my teenage years, it does feel like something I would have gone through in my teenage years, closely anyway. The sets, the props, the costumes are all pretty good. The cars are definitely authentic to the era. That stuff's all pretty good. I mean, that really gives you the feel of the era. I won't talk too much about Mitch touching his nose. I will say that the acting is hit and miss in this one. There is some pretty rough acting, and not just Mitch. But there is some decent.
A lot of Mitch's friends.
A lot of Mitch's friends.
Yeah.
A lot of like the friends of the main characters of all the age groups are kind of like.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's like, even though she's one of the more known names come out of this thing, there's
Joey Lauren.
Yeah, there are parts where Joey Lauren Adams is not good.
She's not on.
Yeah, there are definitely parts where it's like, oh, I can actually tell you're reading right now. You are reading a page right now. I can tell you're reading in this moment. You're reading. The cast is full of like, where do I know them from? Names like the faces that you recognize but have no idea who they are. I mean, there's also, Affleck and McConaughey and a handful of others that you definitely recognize, but it really is full of names that of faces that pop up as supporting roles all over the place in the years to come that nobody ever really follows up on. I think some of, I touched on it. The acting is like kind of inconsistently spread across. I actually think that like the side characters, I guess, that works. This is I honestly almost said side quests out loud when I said side characters, and that threw me for a loop.
Side quests. Was this the Mandalorian?
Right. The side characters I feel like are the most inconsistent part of the acting, but it's still not bad. I mean, there are super memorable parts in this, like the "check you later" line. My friends and I said that a lot. Check you later. That came up a lot. But I do think my complaint on the dialogue is that a lot of it is trying way too hard at the high thoughts kind of discussion. They're leaning, reaching for what does a high person sound like when they're talking, a little bit too much in some of those scenes. And it doesn't feel natural. It feels like written stuff to me.
You mean by not what they say, but how they say it?
A little of both.
Is that what you're meaning?
I think the stereotype of the person getting high and then getting bad philosophical. I mean, that does happen, but some of the stuff that comes out of people's mouths in this feels like somebody who hasn't ever been around a high person writing what they think high thoughts are.
It's almost like these things, like the gun getting shot at, or it's probably like all of these things probably happened, just not in one day, right?
That definitely happened.
Maybe stretched out.
That definitely too. So I feel like some of the dialogue was rough around some of that stuff, but I mean, overall, it's not, narrative-wise, it's not bad. Definitely has some weak points, definitely has some opportunities, but it's certainly not bad. I do want to say, on the story thing, I think I would rather, I don't know where you land on this one, but I think I would rather take the paddle than do that like weird fry like bacon things with ketchup and mustard all over me thing. That like the guy thing was a little more violent, but the girl thing seemed meaner.
It does. It seems really mean.
So
really
demeaning.
Emotionally degrading.
Yeah, I'm not down for that. I also would have just walked out when they came to the school. I would have been like, all right, do your thing. I'm not
just
gonna
get it over with.
I'm not
and
running
make the
for a
summer
summer.
easy.
You're 2 feet taller than me. I'm just gonna, and then maybe at some point they would have had flat tires in the summer. I don't know how, but it could have happened.
That's good.
But yeah, so I was at 13 on narrative. So I mean, I don't know where you landed, but I think that was kind of a little better than average. Not amazing.
Yeah, I'm dead on 13. Also, I got there in a little bit different way. But the acting, you covered it, but I will say, man, how awesome is Parker Posey? I mean,
Yes.
she is so awesome in everything she does. But this is just that role that was made for her. I assume. I don't know how she is in real life, but she does such a good job at playing that role in so many films. This one she shines in. I really enjoy her character in this film. You're right with the acting. It is not great sometimes, but sometimes it's really spot on. The one that I always think people probably take for granted is where Benny is sitting in the lawn chair at the end of the party, and he decides to stand up, and then he decides, hey, it's better that I just sit back down. Like the look on his face is dead on. He did that very well. I thought the costumes very realistic.
Lots of
not
overalls.
just like this. Lots of overalls, and not just the stereotypical 70s costumes overdone, like you see, like the 70s show, right?
Yeah.
It's t-shirts, it's jeans, it's overalls. A few of the kids had some flamboyant pieces, but they were getting dressed up for the night. You know, it didn't happen much. So I think that was spot on with the costumes. With the set, man, it's a lot of Austin, Texas in there. They go to Top Notch Burgers. I think I mentioned in our Scott Pilgrim episode that I ate there before my wife and I went there to check it out. The Moon Towers, we have Moon Towers a lot less now, but they're all over town. So yeah, it's total Austin, Texas there. I will say with the story and the plot, I do appreciate that it is like a slice of life at a certain time. I like it's just like this this simple one night in middle America. I really do appreciate that. There's nothing in depth whatsoever or challenging for the viewer as far as themes and stuff. The theme is just, you live your life. Every one of these characters is living their own lives on their own terms. That's the theme. Live your life. But like we talked in the Little Things reactions episodes, which you can get on our Patreon feed, the films are a theme. Films are a theme with a story wrapped around it. And this film, it's not deep. It's easy to conclude. And that's okay. And Richard Linklater makes it very easy for you to pick up on the theme. I think it's Dawn who says it at the end of the film, and you get a slow motion shot of Pink staring off into the distance. So he wraps it up and hands it to you right there. So in terms of narrative, in that portion of narrative, it doesn't get much. But I will say, in terms of an somewhat accurate, compared to other films that give us these teen type movies, in terms of like an accurate depiction of small town, middle America, Southern life, spot on. I mean, there are some touches. You mentioned the dialogue. There are some touches that he put in there, and there's some innocent ones and there's some more rebellious ones. Like the innocent ones, like the good game handshake with the little leaguers when they're doing that. You can hear in the background some of the guys are saying like, yeah, right, whatever. You know, they're mad, right? The little touches like that are spot on. The more rebellious nature of the teens, there is some element of being very, very real. And I think that's because Richard Linklater experienced this exactly. They say the professional and successful writers always say, write about what you know. And I think that, I'm trying to say this without incrimination here. I think this film is accurate for a cross section of a certain group of people. And I'm not going to comment about the rowdy nature of my youth, but I will say, like, small town America, middle America, besides the hazing. Now, when I got to high school, the hazing was over, but a lot of the film is spot on for teenage years. You hang out, you go cruising, you hit the lesser populated areas of town to hang out. There may or may not have been defacing property. There may or may not have been trashing of mailboxes, flipping bottle caps, calling shotgun, being bored. That is dead on. So maybe what I will say is, if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. Almost like Slater says, that's what I'm talking about, man. So if you don't know, then just take this film more as a reference. And like Forrest Gump says, that's all I'm going to say about that. So that's what I respect about this film. Right or wrong, I think there are a lot of elements that are accurate that you don't see in movies like this. And that's how I got to 13, probably less on the formulaic nature of the narrative, but definitely with some of those aspects. So yeah, I'm with you there. 13 is what I've got also.
So no compromise needed. 13 it is.
No compromise. I love those no compromise episodes. All right, so with music, I will say that you're going to get hit with awesome song after awesome song after awesome song. Well, it's good if you like it. All right. I really love the use of Sweet Emotion, which already has a great intro for the song, but it's an even better intro for a film. It really sets the stage. This to me was like Almost Famous, but without a score. That's kind of how I looked at this. That's what it felt like. And I think that's probably where it suffers. I think overall it's really great, but without any kind of score, I didn't put it quite as high, but it's still pretty high for me. I've got it at 15.
All right, I came in under you, and I don't have a lot to say, but this is what I'll say. So I took, like you said, there's no score. It is a really good selection of licensed music, pretty well tied to the film. I don't think they did as good of a job tying the music to the film as Almost Famous did. I think there are scenes that are as good, but I think Almost Famous was spot on. It's so many times.
Scene,
yeah,
right?
It's so good.
Yeah.
They did such a good job with that.
It's a good call. Yeah, really good call.
The other thing that I thought was not as good here, the other thing that I took that deterred a little bit or detracted a little bit from me here was this was like a greatest hits collection. There was not any. This is all songs that I could still hear on the radio as a high schooler in the mid 2000s. There was no deep cuts. There was no hard pulls. There was no, that's an inspired selection. It was very much like, these are the favorites that everyone's heard a million times from the era. It felt like they pulled the best ofs off the radio, like the classic rock top 10 or top 20, and assigned them to scenes that they were closest to.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Like we talked about some of the deep cut stuff with Almost Famous and with Reservoir Dogs. The songs that you're like, I don't know if I've heard this before, even though it's 20 years old, stuff like that. There was none of that in this. I knew the words to almost every song that played. And so I came in at 13. I thought it was a good soundtrack, a really good soundtrack, but that's kind of where my praise ends.
Is 14 too high? You want to split it, or should we? You feel strongly enough about it to bring it a little bit lower? Because I agree with you. You make a really good point about the Almost Famous and how those were part of that scene. There was specifically for that scene. Yeah,
I think 14 is. I wouldn't be upset with 14, but it is definitely like the absolute high side of what this film could get.
Okay, all right. Let's hold it on 14. We might revisit that in reconciliation.
Yeah, we might
have to think about that one.
Yeah.
What about on technique? Where do you stand with the technique of this film?
All right, so technique in this film is my favorite word. It's fine. I think
it really is.
There's a couple of shots in this that I thought were really cool. We both have our own preferences on shots we really like. I really like a good reflection shot. There's a couple of good reflection shots in like the mirror at the diner, the drive-in diner there, stuff like that. I have some real complaints with the driving scenes. There's so many driving scenes which I don't mind a good driving scene, whatever. I spent a lot of time in my high school days driving around in a car with my friends. That's fine. I do think that a pitch black background with no lighting whatsoever.
There are quite a few of those. You're right.
And there's so many of them, and they don't even bother. Like they add audio of cars driving by in the opposite direction,
Mhm.
but don't even add headlights. They're
Yeah.
driving at night. They don't do
That's-
anything. They just light a scene with them sitting in a car at night and add sound. There doesn't even seem like there's effort to make that look better. There's also, and I guess this goes in technique. I wasn't really sure where to put this, but this movie is like 60% bad ADR. It's all over this film, where like the dialogue is all of a sudden louder than it was 2 seconds ago because they recorded ADR for half the scene. And that stuff jumped out at me, and I didn't like any of it. On the plus side, there was a couple of really good slow pans of classic cars that I was a big fan of that I thought were really good. There was like that long shot through the woods at Mike while he was obsessing over that almost fight that happened that I thought was pretty good. The trees in the way,
That's
kind of.
cool.
I thought that was pretty good. There was even a couple of spots that I thought they used that like slightly slow motion pretty well, like entering the Emporium when they're playing pool.
Oh, yeah.
Like that slightly slow motion. What I liked about that was that it accurately grabbed the way it feels when, this has happened to me very few times.
Guy walking into a smoky bar.
Yeah,
right?
like it's happened to me very few times where I have showed up to a party that people were waiting for me to arrive to. I'm not even the cool guy, just like friends there or whatever. And when you walk in and people are expecting, like waiting for you, or looking forward to seeing you, whatever it might be, you do have like, it does almost feel a little slow motion. You get a little extra pep in your step, like, and they grabbed that feeling really well with that, like, just slightly slow motion. It wasn't even like slow. It was just like a little bit slow. And I thought they did a good job with that. But outside of that, there really isn't much good to say. There's some stuff that I didn't like. The most of the film is like medium distance, center frame shots. And like I said, the car stuff really, like the lack of effort in that car stuff wouldn't have bothered me so much if it wasn't like 40% of the film was driving around in the dark. Like, and maybe it's like 20%, but it's enough of the film where it really started to grate on me a little bit.
That's a good point with the lighting and or lack thereof for those shots, because you do want those kinds of shots, right? You want those perspective shots because that's what they're doing all the time. And that's what you do all the time. You drive around.
You could have given some grip or somebody a flashlight and had them walk by the scene every couple of seconds, right? It didn't have to be complicated, right?
Yeah.
But hearing the cars drive by in the opposite direction and having nothing. It just jumped out so much. So I came in at 12 on technique.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I am too. Those perspective shots, there were a few that I really did like. I mean, when they did light it and did do the scene well, when they did do that really well, the mounted on the cars looking out or looking back on the conversation. They even did one perspective shot, which was interesting, where they mounted the camera on the spray wand at the car wash. I really liked that one. That was kind of interesting. The shots you talked about, they did a helicopter shot at the end. That's kind of cool. There was one really neat shot they did where the camera does a good job floating between conversations of different people, like at the Emporium. I think is Sasha, is that her name? Something like that. But Mitch and the other freshman girl are talking. That's when he does all the touching his nose stuff. And then the camera kind of floats out of their conversation and into another one. That's pretty cool. But yeah, this scene, I was watching the scene where Mitch is getting paddled. This movie has my favorite slow motion shot, and that's Mitch Randall and Wooderson walking into the Emporium, and a cool song, the Hurricanes playing. I mean, that's just very, very, very cool. I had a buddy that really wanted a poster of that when he was in high school, but he never could find one.
I have a question for you on your. I don't know if this technically qualifies. I know you're more acute into this than I am on this particular thing, but I know you do not like it when it happens. But did it bother you at all that frequently they timed the paddlings with the music?
Yeah, I didn't notice it, but you're right, they do that. I didn't happen to notice it with this one, but I'm thinking of it like No More Mr. Nice Guy.
That's one.
Yeah, as it's playing. Yeah, they definitely.
Because I know you've mentioned how much you don't like that in previous films.
The Mickey Mousing. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep. So I'm taking it down a notch. I'm going to 10. No, I'm gonna
taking it down a big notch.
I'm gonna hold it at 12,000 along with you. Is that me to tackle longevity here?
Sure.
Man, the quotes. The quotes are what hold this film throughout the ages. I mean, there's so many of them. So many of them that even McConaughey still does some of his own quotes from this film. He knows that got him where he was headed, and he still does them. You know, the all right. And Wooderson has the most quotes in this thing, but I think by far he probably owns the most of them. It'd be a whole lot cooler if you did. The check you later, you mentioned already. The highly inappropriate, get older, they stay the same age comment. There's just so many quotes in this film that I think a lot of people do know, which for me is not going to put it up into the high rankings of longevity, but it's definitely going to bring it up to where it's higher than most. You know, that's where I'm with. That's where I'm looking at with longevity for this film. It definitely falls into that cult classic file. I don't think this is one that the masses probably have seen, but a lot of people have seen this one. So I think a lot of people still will watch this film. I was never bored through it. I felt that it is still, for the most part, felt relevant. But again, it's just on the higher side of it's fine. So I'm at 12,000 for longevity.
So we're in the same place, but we're only in the same place right now. And I'll explain why.
That's right.
I'll explain that. I think this is an interesting category for this film because I think this film has crossed the peak of its longevity and it's losing stock here. And if we did this film in 2 years, I think this would be a lower number, and in 4 years, it's going to be a lower number even yet. And I'll tell you why. There's a few reasons. One, car culture is totally dead. It's over. Yeah. Like, kids now do not care. I mean, there are some kids, but for the most part, kids now do not care about cars like we did growing up. We've crossed a dividing line there. The bullying and hazing has not just become something that doesn't happen. It's become really unpopular in a way that people don't want to see it. And I think that stuff is going to age even more poorly as time goes than it has in the past 5 or 6 years.
Not from it not being relevant in what people did, just in what people don't want to see.
Yeah, they don't want to see it. They don't think it's not entertaining anymore. Like watching this film in high school, for me, it was something I didn't go through, but it was funny. It's not. Yeah. It's losing its funny as time goes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree.
The music is great, but you know, as we get further, a film that's centered around classic rock, you have to look at things like this. You know, in the 60s, there was certainly classic music that people thought was going to last forever, but 30 years later, 40 years later, it's been replaced. You can only go so far back on music where it stays really relevant, and having the film centered around music like that, we are going to hit that spot where people just aren't familiar with these songs anymore because we've moved past them. Kind of everything in this film has an expiration date that.
And we're bumping up against
quickly approaching those expiration dates. Even, I mentioned it at the top of the show, some of the language, in the 90s, you could drop that F word and it was not appropriate, but it wasn't super unpopular. Same with the R word, that was one that was all over the place in the 90s. Those words are as bad as the other F word and things now. Right, people have become more clued into how insensitive some of those words were in the past 20 years, and I think we're at the deadline for those. I think we are approaching a lot of deadlines for this film. So while I think it is a 12,000 now, based on how far it's already made it and its relevance in pop culture, and the quotes and references, I think you got to give it credit for that. I do think we are already seeing the decline for this, and you're entering where that decline gets steeper on longevity.
You think 5 years ago the longevity would have been higher?
I do. I think if we had done this when I was in high school, the longevity probably would have been around like 17. If you go back, because it was hitting all those notes. Everybody, it was, we'll say 2003 when I was getting my license, the year I got my license. Everybody watched this. I knew people who dressed in high school
Yeah.
like this based on this film. This was all over. I guarantee you that is not the case now. And I think we are into the decline now. And I think that decline is going to get steeper.
I can see that. I definitely can see that. Yeah, this may be a reconciliation we take a look at, just to look at it for fun in a couple of years, should we still be around.
I'm sure we will.
All right, so 12,000 for longevity brings us to uniqueness. Why don't you take a stab at uniqueness?
I don't have a lot for uniqueness. I don't think this is bad in this category. I don't think this is a really weak category. I don't think it's a strong category. I think there's a few things here that come into play. The car-centric teen coming-of-age hangout movie is pretty well-worn territory. Although I think the majority of the ground that was covered in this genre was covered 20 years before this film came out. I think we had a lot of popularity of like the car-centric film kind of thing in like the mid 70s into the 80s. I think we saw a lull in that, and this was kind of like a throwback. And I think that the throwback part of it actually helps a bit because it's handled well. It's a little more of a comedy than we were used to seeing that genre of film be. It was more drama centric when it made its first round. I think some of that stuff plays in, but I really don't think this is all that unique. I think the uniqueness in this comes from some of the comedy stuff, some of the throwback stuff, some of the like referential stuff, and primarily the way it set the slice of life in an accurate depiction. I think that is the thing that stands out with this one over the others in this category. Because like I mentioned before, the other films the other popular films anyway that you see in this category have really high stakes. It's always like someone is ill or an unwanted pregnancy, or those are the things that they put in these. It was like these big things that most people never experienced, at least not the way the film's depicted. This was very real. Like you could really identify, at least in our age. I don't like when I grew up, we still did the drive around on Friday night in cars and hang out thing. I don't think that's happening at all anymore. But even that part removed, just the social cue stakes of like trying to enter into high school and dealing with the anxiety around that and trying to figure a way to fit in and make it all right, like that stuff. I think that stuff is all more real and more relatable, and I think it gets uniqueness from that instead of being this over-the-top thing. But for me, I don't think there was enough there to bring it into the upper tiers at all. I fell right down the middle at 10 on uniqueness.
Okay, I'm a little higher. I'm at 12. I came to basically the same conclusion that you did. Well, first, when I see a film that's written by the director, I think I I can't even say the word.
We know what you mean.
Subliminally, whatever it is. I think I find myself wanting to give it a little more when the writer is the director. Not 1,000 or 500. Just I feel like I lean towards it being a little bit more unique. That might have been the case here, but what you said is basically how I feel. When I judged uniqueness for this film, I looked at it first. Have I ever seen anything like this? Generally, yeah, I have. Because it's very much in the vein of American Graffiti,
Yep.
But for the 70s, right?
Yep.
So I was just like you. I was like, okay, so it's fine. It's at 10. We're fine. But I gave it a little bit more because not all of it is like this, but it definitely has more authenticity with what they do, how they act, and the dialogue that they have in certain situations. We talked earlier about a little bit overdone with some of the stoner language, but I'm talking about the conversations that regular people have, just like that you don't see in most films, conversation that high school friends have. Think about when Simone and Darla, and I think her name's Siobhan, they're in Darla's truck and Simone's asking, asking them what those other girls said about her. And I grew up with three sisters. That is a legit conversation that you would hear girls have, or that a group of friends would have about some other girls. Or when Mitch's friends are leaving the junior high dance and they're talking about the physique of a girl that was there. That is a junior high conversation,
Yes.
an immature junior high conversation. Now, that's not the case with all these conversations, but I think they're quite a bit in this film. Yeah, so I'm at 12,000. I'd be willing just to split it there and call it 11. That's pretty fair value for it if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's close enough.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and take a look at where this film's going to rank on the guest list. Where does that put us?
Puts us at 19 on the guest list, right below Evil Dead, right above High Fidelity.
Okay. Yeah. So out of how many on the guest list now? What are we up to?
It's
20.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but we're at 27. Yeah, it does. It's a lot more.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. That's a lot.
On the definitive list, a lot more films on that one. Puts it in a little bit different area for the definitive list. So we didn't say the total. What that's the 62,000 is the total for this film. On the definitive list, our top 25. It's actually up to 46 now. But we look at the top 25 films. We pulled a random selection from AFI and the multitude of lists that AFI does for various genres. And we put them together and appraised them. We have a top 25 list. Last time we talked with Scott Pilgrim, it snuck into the top 25. This one definitely doesn't. It's down at 38. Not to say that's a bad thing. Not to say this is not a film we don't like. Far from it. I really, really like this film. I enjoy it a lot and laugh a lot throughout it. And we'll watch it over and over. But as far as putting it up against the definitive list, comes in at number 38, same place that it falls with the guest list, right below Evil Dead and right above High Fidelity. If we look at 35 through 40, we start with number 35, and that one is Willow. Then we go to The Village, Evil Dead, Dazed and Confused, High Fidelity, and The Fifth Element, rounding out number 40. So not bad territory, but I think it, again, I like where we have it. I think it fits exactly where it probably should fit.
Yeah, this is one of those ones I think nostalgia is a big part of. I think nostalgia is the thing we don't measure that this film has a lot of. So if you have nostalgia for it, like we both do, and I'm sure a number of our listeners do, it probably feels higher to you until you start really breaking it down and you see where the weaknesses are or aren't. And but I do think I think it's a fair spot for it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Nostalgia is a powerful drug.
It's not what Rick James said. All right, so let's talk about. Oh man, I am not gonna lie to you. I am super pumped about the next film. The next film is your pick, but you've got a sound clip, right?
I do have a sound clip, and you, if you went through our "What did you watch this weekend" Mondays posts and looked for like films that show up a lot, you probably would notice this one come through a bunch. I watch this movie a lot. I love this film. So we'll play the soundbite. I'll play the soundbite. We'll kick it in, and we'll see what we get.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, then you must like movies. You know this one. I know you all know it.
Everybody,
but let's go ahead and hear what you got.
Everybody knows this one. Here it is.
Time! The hell, what do you want?
How you feeling today?
What?
I said, how you feeling?
What are you, a doctor or
What,
something?
you got problems today?
Never mind my problem. What's your problem?
My problem is I've been talking to your man Mike. I want to know how come I've been put out of my lot.
Because Dipper needed it. Dipper's a contender. He's a climber. Do you know what you are?
What?
A tomato.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be good.
I'm pumped for this one. That's a
gonna be
great
good.
choice, man.
I mean,
such a great choice.
I'm not gonna like call my shot here or nothing, but I think I have a pretty good chance of like the way I'm pulling these movies of like really filling out the guest list top 5 here. I'm working on it.
Yeah. People are gonna think we're biased, right?
If I just keep picking the good ones, it's not my fault I have good taste in movies. I also picked Galaxy Quest, though, right?
That we got to make that a T-shirt now. It's not my fault I have good taste in movies. I have a friend from high school, still a good buddy of mine, and he quotes not the main character, how I want to say it, everybody knows. He quotes Mickey a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes the more colorful aspects of
I do a lot of impressions.
Of Mickey's choice for words.
I do a lot of impressions of this film. Maybe we'll save them for the after show next time.
The next after show,
Yeah.
we will definitely, and we'll definitely get our impressions in there. Well, Joe, tell us what's been going around, or what's been going on with the Barrel House. That's your other show.
That is my other show. It's been good. We did, so I've kind of got a good cadence down now. I have 2 episodes a month, every other Sunday. Show comes out, and on the Fridays in between, I've been doing live streams. They're going pretty well. They're getting a little less janky and a little more, a little more organized. Each live stream last week, I had Mike Rondo, EGM Mike, on for the live stream. It went way longer than I anticipated, and it only stopped because my power went out. So,
well, Mike definitely has the gift of gab.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to stop talking. That's for sure. But
you said it a little bit more relaxed than I said it. But yeah.
I mean, I went even went so far as to call him out for how frequently he listens to all of our shows. And
all right, there we go. Finally,
no, it's fun. It was fun. So yeah, the live streams are a little more like just have a drink and hang out. We talked about the Super Bowl and pairing whiskey with cigars or pipes and some of our favorite drinks, stuff like that. We went through a few things, and it was very relaxed, and it's sort of tangentially related to whiskey, but they're fun. And so yeah, that's kind of been where we're at, and it's been fun. Barrel House has been fun so lately.
And they can find it at.
Oh yeah, you might want to know where to find it. If I wasn't so bad at this, you would know how to find it. You can get that. BarrelHousePodcast.com has links to everywhere you can listen to it and the live streams and whatnot.
Very good. And if you want to find more on our show, Instagram is at Film Appraisers. Our email is filmappraisers@gmail.com. Website, eargluemedia.com/TFA. And then eargluemedia.com/Discord is your own personal invite to our Discord server. Go talk to me, talk to Joe, talk to Mike, even Terrence, who picked this film. He'll be on there. He will definitely be on there after this drops to let us know what he thinks about it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Hopefully he doesn't pull his just support after this.
Pull his subscription, right? Yeah. 100,000. We're gonna amend it. If you want to find some of our merchandise, we'll put it into the show notes where you get this podcast. And then at patreon.com/filmappraisers is where you can go. We just talked about it with Terrence there. We've got a handful of other folks. A lot of support there. We'd love to have you come over there and check us out.
Yeah, and while you are, you would think I would be better at plugging things, considering I do this every time we do this show, but I apparently don't even know how to plug my own show.
50-something episodes.
Yeah, right. While you're on there, while you're checking out all of the places you can find us and the Discord and Earglue Media, all those things, also do us a favor, rate, review the show, hit iTunes up, and let us know what you think. It means a lot.
Definitely means a lot. It means a lot to the show. We do appreciate it. All right, patrons, you guys hang out for a bit. Joe and I are going to head over to the after show, so we'll see you there. For everyone else, thank you all for listening, and goodbye.
The Film Appraisers was created by Josh McCrae, produced by Joe Kane and Josh McCrae, graphics by Albert Padilla, and voiceover by Morgan Marshall.
The thoughts, expressions, views, opinions, and the like are those of the guests and the host of the Film Appraisers and do not represent the opinions of any entity associated with the creation or distribution of the films discussed herein.